there's a lot going on. I'll give you an update on the competition and such, but we have some space that's under construction that will be ready. They're telling me mid-May. So right across the street, on the ground floor of Leiden Library, there's a whole bunch of construction going on, and we've got about 2,500 square feet of space that is going to be Difference Maker Central. And so we're going to have a place at the end of May where folks can kind of work out of get together, brainstorm, come and meet and learn and do things. And we have whiteboards all over it, and there'll be TV projection, and Holly and Har and the Difference Maker student team will be over there to help you. It was supposed to be done in January, this past, well, sometimes things move a little slow. The Kinder twins are here. How you doing? Caught you in the middle of a pizza, didn't I? You're semi-famous, actually, so you may not have known that yet. See? So I see some new faces. So you'll have that space. So regardless of what happens with the Difference Maker competition, whether your project gets funded or not, you'll still have that space as a resource. And one of the things we're going to do out of that space is we'll have workshops and things like this, but we'll also have information on resources. And tonight we're going to spend some time talking about resources and what types of resources people need. And I envision that area as being a place where you can come if you've got a problem, if you need some help, you can come in, touch base, find out about other grant programs that are out there, find out about faculty and mentors. And in fact, we're in the process of hiring a full-time person who's going to work with us, and part of that person's job is going to be to help develop a mentor program and link mentors with our students and help them move their projects forward. So that's something to keep looking at. Any seniors in here? A couple. Are you going to go to graduate school, you think? So you'll still be around, right? Good. What about you, Erin? All right, very good. All right. Do you all know Erin Webster? Erin is a senior in engineering, electrical and computer engineering, and she works with David Harrington. They worked on the Mind Mouse project, which changed into another name. Now you're Proto2Go, right? So they're kind of an inventive pair who do some really interesting work. They've received several rounds of funding through the Campus Catalyst program. They're actually running their own startup out of the M2D2 incubator space right now, where they help other people develop prototypes. They've in fact been hired to develop prototypes for medical device companies that have raised millions of dollars. So I asked Erin to come and join us tonight because she can talk a little bit about what they've needed money for and what the different types of resources they are. So what I thought we would do tonight is I'll give you an update on the schedule because there's a lot going on. I think the last time I was here I said we had 25 teams. Well, we have 45 teams that submitted applications. So we ended up with quite a turnout among students. And that has the administration very, very excited. One of the things I did when I was in Florida is I spent some time with the chancellor and some of the vice chancellors and some of the alums. And they were very excited about this program. I told them what we were doing. I told them how we had these students who were trying to solve problems and they were looking for funding for those types of things. And folks were very interested in that. So what you're doing is a big deal. And I'll give you an update on how we're going to address it. We want to check in with you all, see how your progress is going, what types of progress you're making in terms of your project. Then we'll spend some time talking about resources. And what we've tried to do over the last couple of workshops, this whole pitch that you'll be doing, right, it's going to talk about a problem, the opportunity, your solution, and the resources you need. And so what we've been trying to do with each of these sessions is kind of introduce you to those topics so you'll be able to give a compelling 3-minute pitch to the judges. And I'm not sure we'll actually do much rocket pitch practice tonight, but we do have a whole day set aside for that. So the schedule update. The next event that we have going on is on April 4th. It is the rocket pitch practice. And so we've set aside an entire day in this room to help you practice your rocket pitch. So throughout the day, there'll be a mix of us. The faculty fellows are here. You guys want to raise your hand? And Linda, I consider you in that gang now. You've become one of us. So we'll have these folks and a few more who will be here to listen to your pitches and then offer you some suggestions on how to present it to show you and your concept and your team in the best light. So that'll be April 4th. What we'll do is I think Holly and How will be working on an online sign-up sheet, right? Great. So you'll be able to sign up for like a 15-minute slot. Is that what we're looking at? 10 to 15 minutes? Yeah. Slot, so you can come in here and get some coaching. Every team that's planning to compete in the event, so I say we have 45 applications, I don't think every team is actually going to follow through and do all the work that's required. But I'm guessing that 30 to 35 of the teams will do that. So every team that wants to pitch for the funds, for the money, and the glory, will need to do a practice pitch. Now, if for some reason you can't be around on April 4th, let us know that, and we'll set up a time. Yeah, if for some reason you can't make it, you'll just let Holly and Han know, and they'll figure out another time for you. But we're going to go ahead with the 4th, because we have 35 teams, I suspect, that we have to squeeze in. So that's the 4th. If you can't make it, let them know, and they'll set up another time. We want to see everyone's pitch before we put you up in front of very successful alumni. Let's see, April 8th. April 8th, and this information was all emailed out, right? So all of you should have received a submission materials and judging process, sort of an outline of what we're planning. If you didn't receive that or you lost it, just let Holly know and she can send you another copy of it. On April 8th, you need to share an idea plan and your rocket pitch. And so basically an idea plan, and I believe there's a template for it. Have we sent them the template, Holly? Do you know? Okay. So, and we'll make sure that all that information is up on the website there. The idea plan is basically a 2-page document, right? Where we're keeping it simple here, right? Problem, opportunity, solution, resources. Single sheet of paper, right? Our goal is that it'll be on one piece of paper, 2 sides, and we'll copy these and we'll get them out to all the judges. And that's kind of a document that we'll need you to give us on April 8th, as well as your rocket pitch. Your slides will, I would suggest, you only have 3 minutes, right? So you're really talking 4 to 5 slides, 5 at the most, right? Because you have to really move through it. And you don't, in the rocket pitch thing, we'll talk to you about this, we don't want you to read the slides. We want you to sort of pitch your product. But the slides is sort of a background information for people as you're talking. And that's due on April 8th. We need to have it by April 8th because of this pitch off. What happened, because we had so many teams, which is a wonderful opportunity for us, we can't have 45 teams pitching on the last night. So what we're going to do is a pitch off on April 12th. April 12th is a Friday, correct? It's a good thing I have help. I just would not be able to keep track of things. So, what's that? It's definitely a Friday. So on April 12th, across the street in the Emerging Technology Center, from around 3 o'clock to 6:30, we're going to have a pitch off. And the pitch off will actually go on, and we have Tom O'Donnell. Have you all met Tom O'Donnell? Tom is this gentleman, this stern-looking gentleman in the back of the room here. Tom is actually teaching a managing innovation course, helping us to coordinate the pitch off on that day. And then you all know our faculty fellows, Professor Chad Montry, Professor Daniel Sullivan, Professor Supriya Chakrabarti, and then Linda Barrington, who is the Service Learning Coordinator in the College of Engineering, and is simpatico to what we're doing here. So these folks are all here to help. So because we had so many, we're going to have a pitch off on April 12th. And what we'll do is we'll probably break you up into groups of 8 to 10 teams. We'll take those 8 to 10 teams. We have 3 conference rooms over in the Emerging Technology Center. You'll come into a room. You'll give your pitch to a small panel of judges and a couple of other folks, and they'll have a score sheet, and they'll kind of score the teams. And then we'll also have some other things going on there to keep folks entertained. And at the end of that day, we'll sit down. We're going to pull all those sheets together, and out of the anticipating, say, 30 to 35 teams that pitch, we'll narrow it down to 9 to 10 that'll actually pitch on the April 17th event. So the heat's on here, right? We had to have a preliminary. I do want to let you know that everybody who participates is going to be recognized. Every team that participates will be recognized in some capacity. We'll have some type of appreciation gift for all the teams that participate in the pitch off. So we want to make sure that you all know that that your participation in this is important, and we want to recognize that. So the pitch off will be on April 12th, and then the finale will be on April 7th. And that is, again, across the street. Now, originally we were going to do this at the ICC, but the Vice Chancellor and Chancellors got very excited about this, and they said, no, we want you in the Emerging Technology Center. So there will be a great big shindig on April 17th that every team is invited to. So even if you don't pitch at the finale, you'll have an opportunity to display a poster of your idea, and there will be alums there who like to invest in student projects. So we'll encourage folks, even if you don't make it into the grand finale pitch-off there, that you still come, have a poster. We'll have hors d'oeuvres and dinner and an opportunity to meet with alums and talk with each other. And it should be a fun and festive event. So that's how this is unfolded. As I mentioned at the whole beginning of the process, this is the first time we've done this. It turned out a little bigger than we thought, and we're kind of rolling with all that. And Holly, we can send these slides out to folks, right, so they can... Yeah, or sample them online. Okay, put them up on the website? Great. The other thing we're going to do with this money is, and there's been the source of the money is from alumni, right? And our alumni have different interests. So we have engineering alumni, nursing, business, humanities, social sciences, folks from different groups. And originally when they talked about this, they were saying, well, we're going to give you money for the business students. We're going to give you money. And we thought the problem with that is we've been encouraging you to work with other people, right? So many teams are interdisciplinary, which is really important in building a successful venture, regardless of the type. So we've come up with some product categories, or award categories, really. And these are subject to some change. But basically what we're looking at, we'll probably have a UMass Lowell campus-wide difference maker, so there'll be sort of like a grand prize award in there. And then the product most likely, a category most likely to be a successful product in the market. So this may be something that may not have huge social significance, but it has a very high likelihood of moving forward and being a successful product. Product that, or venture or concept that has the most likely or most significant social impact, the most innovative technology product or innovation, and then a sustainable environment. Any typos up there? No, not bad. So those are probably the 5 categories we're looking at. And we haven't exactly figured out how the division of funding will go, but people will get some significant funding to implement these projects over the next year. I mean, basically we're looking at between $25,000 and $30,000 that will be divided up amongst these 5 teams. And I'll talk a little bit about what you can spend that on in a minute. And as I mentioned, everyone's going to get some sort of token. In fact, the Executive Vice Chancellor, Jackie Maloney, who I've worked with for years, looked at me and said, well, we have to give them all something. And I was like, well, no, it's a competition, you know. Not everybody wins. This isn't soccer, you know, youth soccer. No, Steve, we have to give them something. So you can rest assured you will all receive something in this. Any questions? And we held off on naming these categories until we looked at the ideas that were received. Fact of the matter is, these categories cover everything that's been submitted, every concept that you've put forward. So there's an opportunity for everybody to benefit some way in this. All right. Okay, so what I would like to know, and what we would like to know, is a little bit about the progress that you all have made so far.
Well, my team's idea, they're not here today. It's called Lowell Sprouts. We're an organization focusing on teaching younger children how to garden and grow their own food, and we think it's important because being less dependent on food that's grown far away can really cut down on transportation and carbon emissions, things like that. So that was the problem that we identified. The opportunities, we've already met with a couple schools. We're already in one school. We're trying to get set up in another school here in Lowell, and both of them said they would be happy to expand on it and working into curriculum, things like that. Other than that, we haven't gone as far as developing a budget or anything. So.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. So this group, Lowell Sprouts, so I mentioned that this is open both to students and to recent alumni. So this is a group that was started by Mary Beth Scully, who graduated from psychology, I believe, last May. So there's, for those of you that are graduating, there are ways to carry these projects on and keep them moving forward. So.
My name's Webster. I've been part of the Difference Maker program, Campus Catalyst. I've been involved in assistive technology. I've traveled with the assistive technology program to do outreach in India, Turkey.
How many times have you been to India?
I've been to India 3 times. We usually go for about a month. We do assistive technology, disability awareness, grade school outreach with hands-on science and robotics and female empowerment. And, oh yeah, and now we did a startup, Proto2Go, which does prototype development services for local medical startups. One of our startup companies recently got $7 million in funding based on the prototype that we built for them. We're located over in M2D2.
The Rwanda genocide essentially messed with like a lot of their heads, so they need like psychological treatment, and she saw like the it's just not too well over there, so she starting up this business. It's a non-profit, and she's trying to send help over there, like so the kids can get psychological help, or just anybody can talk about what had happened, and it's just open, and they can have the help that they need. And it's a non-profit. We have a website. We don't really have much money, and that's where I come in. I'm in charge of marketing. I'm just trying to work out what we can do to get the money that we need to send people over to Rwanda to help out.
So what's your hook in terms of, why should I give you money? How are you going to get money out of my client?
It's really just tugging on your heartstrings, really. I mean, honestly,
come on.
What do you want me to do?
But you're essentially a Doctors Without Borders, but you want to be Psychiatrists Without Borders?
Kind
Is that sort of?
Essentially, yeah. But I mean, it's just, the way I see it is that this can expand to something great. I mean, conflicts like this have happened all over the world, and people need help. Like, people need to talk to somebody. These are people that we're talking about, yeah. And they live with these images of their brother, their mother being slaughtered. It's just, it's messed up.
We're still developing our idea. But we have a couple, but the one that we want to pursue the most is a hip pad, because for sports that require a lot of impact and force, we realize that there's the major area of injury occurs in the hip area. So we want to design a pad that covers the hip, because football players and hockey players have to wear pads, and there's a pant pad that you have to wear, but nothing covers the hip. So we want to make a gel type bead material that will move with the player, so that when they get hit, the impact is spread out throughout the pad, so that it's not impacted in one area.
What's your sports people too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Are you field hockey? Or?
Hockey and lacrosse.
Hockey. Field hockey or regular hockey?
Ice hockey.
Ice hockey, okay. You have pads for that?
Yeah, but nothing for the hip. So
oh.
a lot of our teammates, they have hip injuries, like either the bone or bruising, that they are out for the season. So because of getting checked into the board so many times, or get in football, getting hit into players, constant bruising is damaging the bones.
I guess
So
if I could, my quick question when you're talking about this would be, and why doesn't it exist?
Yeah, exactly my question.
no.
Good, yeah.
I mean, I think that would be the one thing that I would want you to address in the first, like either it's been looked at before, or you're not the first. Hopefully, you're not the first people who have been noticing this. So I think you need to really kind of hone in on what has ever been done before, and why you're bringing something that sort of answers the problems of why people have abandoned it. Like you just said, maybe this kind of novel bead material might be the thing that, because obviously you need to flex across the hips, and maybe that's why they've abandoned it so many times. Now might be
the hook.
The time to do it.
A different kind
Say
of.
you go out to a restaurant to eat, and then you first go on Yelp and you read the reviews, and then you go maybe Groupon and download a deal, and then you go to All Menu to look at the menu. We pretty much put everything in one place where the user can see everything they want about a restaurant before going there, so they can have like a virtual tour of the inside of the place, make an online reservation, order the food there, really anything they want. And the problem that we identified is that Groupon, which is they own the largest part of the market in the deals industry. They are doing very horrible right now, and their stock just went down to less than $4 from like 25, and they fired their CEO. And this is a $7 billion a year industry, and it's growing by 12% every year. So we want to fill in that gap because Groupon, what they don't do right is cater to the restaurant owners. They really, whoever runs a Groupon deal as a restaurant owner, you actually lose $1 to $2 on average for every single deal that's downloaded. So we have a new way of presenting all these deals and making it fun for the user through both our app and the website, where you can actually download free deals to these restaurants, and the restaurants create their own deals. We don't take a cut from that at all, and we make our revenue through other ways of advertising. And we see a lot of opportunity in this, especially after we attended the New England Food Show, which is 3 days. It was actually 2 weeks ago, and every user there was 10,000 people that went there, and all these people that came to us, they were all signing up. They really liked the idea. Just from the trade show alone, we had about 100 users, and we had about 30 restaurants sign up, which that was a good way of exposing ourselves. We also have a lot of investors coming up to our table and asking us like, what you guys do, and after a few minutes with them, we collected about 40 different business cards, so we have to actually follow up with all those people to see how it goes. But how we want to, description of the solution, I guess, is that we want to make sure to provide infrastructure where the customer, which is the restaurant owner, is getting their money's worth, and so the user is happy using the service, and make it like fun and cool for them to actually use that service. Unlike Groupon right now, you kind of go and download a deal. I'm sure plenty of you use Groupon. You just download a deal, and then you go to this restaurant. Maybe you don't even like it, and you lost your money. We're making sure we don't do that.
So my project is called Teaching Respect for All. Basically, the idea is to go ahead and have women's correctional facilities and local animal shelters work as partners. The reason for this is because in the facility that I've been working with primarily, which is in Niantic in Connecticut, they have up to 83% recidivism, which is to imply that 83% of the women, depending on the conviction, depending on what it is that they're in there for, will more than likely, after being released, end up right back inside once again, at least once, if not more. And my idea is to go ahead and tie local animal shelters into this because there are obviously plenty of animals out there who, at these shelters, they're basically stuck inside of these very small dog runs and in the kennels themselves, just because they lack resources. And these women are, if you're going to draw a parallel that way, they're also stuck inside of what would be basically their prison cells. And they are at times, and this is not even just for some sort of solitary confinement, that at times, once they've been in there for an extended period of time, are in there up to 23 hours a day just inside of their room. What I'd like to be able to do, and this is where it gets a bit complicated and yet it doesn't. I've been talking with different folks in different ways who are involved in correctional facilities in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Connecticut to try and find a way to make this, to find a way to implement this within the correctional facilities themselves. It's a little bit difficult just simply because the shelters would be, from the shelters that I've spoken to, they are more than happy to do this because they are always eager for volunteers to come out and to work with the animals, including folks who are, the women who are in the correctional facility. The only difference being is that the correctional facility itself has a very stringent background check, which the person, whoever would be bringing, and that's my idea, is to these women who are in the prisons, they would not actually be getting paid to do this. They are more than, at 23 hours a day inside of their prison cells, they are more than happy to volunteer, which is pretty much how everything runs. They're more than happy to take half an hour just to step outside within the correctional facility itself, but just to step outside to be able to go and interact with these animals, the dogs that are brought over, and obviously their guards, all the correctional, corrections officers are there to start off with. So it's not a big deal that way, but it's the fact that I would need somebody from the shelter who would need to first off pass the background check, and then two, would be willing to transport, say, 4 dogs for the day over to the correctional facilities. So whether that would be volunteer-based, whether that would be something where it's a paid employee because the shelter, and it would have to be a local shelter obviously because there would have to be within a reasonable drivable distance to the correctional facility. So that's my main thing right now, and hopefully I'm expressing that well enough, that the idea is to basically have a shelter with dogs that have already been socialized, so they're already friendly and they know that these dogs can get along well in an enclosed environment with supposed strangers, bring them to the corrections facility by 1 or 2 employees or volunteers, and then once they're there, have these women brought out with security supervision to whatever, if it's the gym or whatever the facility, the building happens to be, and have them go there and just interact with these animals, because within the facility itself, these women are not getting the kind of reinforcement and the resources to rebuild their, really their self-worth, so that they feel like once they get out and are released, that they don't have to fall back on the problems that actually got them back in there in the first place. So that's really the whole idea, is that way the animals are benefiting because it's just additional socialization for them, and then the women are also benefiting from this because it's reinforcing that they are not just inmates, they are actually people, and then once they get out, they can go back to, and use that self-esteem, that self-worth, and be able to apply that in their real, in everyday real life.
So you've set us up well for the resource discussion, because what we're going to think about is what you need resources for.
Brendan.
Aaron. Katie.
So we're working on a prosthetic limb for children in third world countries who can't afford them. We've presented this idea quite a few times, but we really knocked out a lot of the kinks that we were having with it. So our original idea was we were going to mass produce all these limbs and send them to different countries, but that makes us very top heavy. It's a very expensive initial investment, no guarantee it'll work. So we talked to a lot of doctors, we talked to some distributing centers, I talked to a group that runs out of Guatemala actually, and they were ecstatic about the idea of just having very cheap, easily producible limbs to distribute to kids. So the number one thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to stay light on our feet, and so we're not going to have any inventory. So if we're not having any inventory, that means we can increase customization. So we developed what seems to be functioning, a 3D scanner with a Kinect. So I can have someone stick their arm in a box, I can measure their arm, and then I can clone their arm, send it back up to the States and manufacture it here and send it back down there. True customization at that end can be done with a silica gel. So we did approach the problem like engineers in that if it's broke, just put in a new part. Not necessarily the most organic way to handle it, but it is. And we have a much stronger business model now, so we sell lower, not necessarily lower quality, but different styles of hands as toys to children.
You notice Erin's smiling,
yes,
here, right? Because she's been to India, so you guys should talk.
I've seen
yes.
prosthetic limb manufacturing being done in rural India.
It's fantastic,
the
isn't it?
plastic bottles, I was floored by it. It was, but yes.
The coolest thing I ever saw was they would take the detached limb, stick it in basically plaster mold
That's
to get
awesome.
a cast of the limb, flip it upright, superheat plastic. I'm not a plastics engineer. I'm a
Yeah,
lab.
that's exactly what we were talking about last night,
You heat it up,
actually.
you drop it on it, and it was
Yeah,
custom
no,
fit, and
it's
then they just put a big plastic limb on the end.
I've seen some. It amazes me how necessity creates absolutely the most amazing inventions I've seen across the board.
So what's neat here is you guys have, over the last couple of months now, have refined this
Yes.
a bit. So I know when you first came in here, you had a couple of different ideas. You're
Mhm.
trying to figure out what problem. You've looked at the problem more closely, right? You've looked at what other people are doing to try to refine it. And I think that their concept, there's this whole discussion around serving the bottom of the pyramid.
Testing on it, it can support up to 200 pounds, and I don't particularly see 200-pound children running around that often in a poverty-stricken environment.
They're moving fast.
They are moving, yeah, they are. It's true. There's a lot of force, but like it was designed to take quite a beating, not to be affected by much by environment. It's designed to mimic human body weight, so you don't grow up to have incorrect proportions, which can cause problems. And it funds itself through a different model. We didn't want to have to ask for donation because that's not very effective for us in terms of design, because it's hard to market that. So our solution is actually to replace those grabby claws that you see in museums. Everyone's seen them before. They're those little toys that kids see. Yeah, the dinosaur claws, those little toys that every kid wants when they go to the museum. We can market them at the same price. And most museums, we talked to the Museum of Science in Boston, and they said they'd actually just sell it to us, sell it to people for us for free as a charity event. And so we can give them a box of limbs, which is a terrifying concept, and children will go, I want to pick things up with those limbs, and parents will go, please take this and be quiet. And that's how we'll make the money. So basically you buy one of those, and it basically pays for a limb in a third world country. And we're hoping to get nice packaging down, so when you buy
it's like that
documentation.
laptop, right, model.
Yeah, it has the same model as the OLPC.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's our structure right now.
So this is exciting. This is exciting.
So we have a real mix. And so when I talked about the project categories earlier, that was the reason why we have different award categories, right? Because we know that we have folks that are coming at this from very different angles. And honestly, that's what makes this such a great, that's why it's the difference maker competition. That's why it's create solutions, not necessarily create businesses. Because we're trying different things. Some of them will be businesses, some of them will be something different. So are there any things that you're really worried about right now? Think about prototype. And I was thinking about your project as well, right? Because you've done that, you're doing that due diligence where you're talking to different prisons and finding out what the policies are in different states. This is a pilot, right? You don't have to do it in all those prisons, right? You have to prove it works in one. Yeah. So I think when you lay out your solution, you'll say, so this is what we propose to do over the next year, and this is what we're going to use this money for. And then based on that, and you may say, I think it's pretty safe to guess that the prizes will be somewhere in the $5,000 vicinity. So if you go into this thinking that maybe I need $10,000 to implement my project, and I know I can get a couple here, and I can do some sweat equity and cover this piece, and I'm going to use the $5,000 for this. And if you tell people this is what I'll accomplish with the money. So it doesn't have to be complete. I mean, if that, you show the judges that $5,000 will allow me to run query checks on 2 people, hire someone for $2,500 to do this. I mean, one way to address that might be to figure out a longer-term business model. You have the testing pilot, then the longer-term model. The testing pilot is, I want to use this money to test this in one prison, and this is how we're going to use it. And the goal will be to develop a sustainable model to show success and get other people and other sources to, maybe prisons will support it. Maybe animal rights groups might support it. There may be different sources of funding in the long term. But the goal for this project is to propose a pilot, right? And to say, this is what we think we can accomplish. And ultimately, the judges will make the decision. So we'll have to figure that out. Because honestly, I've been pushing the envelope with these student projects. The school has all these policies for faculty research and grad students working for contract. The bottom line here is that the venture that you bring to the table here, the IP, if there is any, or the concept is yours, and the school makes no claim on that. When you start using injection molding equipment, we'll have to talk to the plastics department, for example. But you do have the chancellor and vice chancellors on your side in this conversation. So, and it's also possible to think about what you could do is figure out what would they charge for that, and put that in the budget as well. So there's always the possibility of just buying that time out of this money, and then it's nice and clear. Or certainly, what I would suggest in that case, put that in a budget. Now you may end up using it for something else, but I guarantee you, when the alumni and the chancellors see $5,000 in your budget for injection molding, they're going to say, well, can't we do something about that? This is a good segue into resources. And this is just, you've seen all this. This was sort of the process, the dates, and how we've kind of broken this up, and we're at the resource piece. So what kinds of resources? I throw this term resources around. What kind of resources do you all think you'll need? I've already heard equipment, right? Technical equipment resources. Equipment or access to it. What else? Human resources. Manpower, yeah. Labor. Yep.
Consulting for professors of
knowledge resources. Some of us are more knowledgeable than others, but we won't get into that. Lots of different knowledge resources. Other resources. Erin, what's some of the, what did you spend? What have you spent? I know you, how many Catalyst grants did you receive?
I believe it was 4 or 5 Catalyst grants, and we also got the money from competition.
So you received at least $2,250 from Catalyst grants, and then we gave you, I think, another 1,000. So what did you spend your money on?
Tools, wood, plastic, electronic ICs, cases, basically anything you can buy at Home Depot.
Yep.
We also worked on our EEG, EMG communication system for ALS patients.
That's electromagnetic graphic-y something or other?
Oh, I'm an engineer. I know we get a voltage in
okay,
a range that comes across the forehead
problem.
when you yeah, the medical side we were a little weak on. We ended up spending it on the medical sticky electrodes, we spent it on tablets, we spent it on, again, computer components.
And on the Catalyst money, you weren't allowed to pay for labor, right, on that?
You could not pay yourself, you could not use it for anything they deemed unnecessary.
Yeah.
And you also had all the restrictions of the university pro cards. One semester we needed to buy a tablet. You can't buy a computer on a pro card from the university, so it had to go through a purchase order. We got to know the purchasing department very, very well. All of their forms. So I guess really know the spirit in which you're being given money and how you get access to it. You know, are they giving you a check? Are they letting you use a pro card? Are they letting you have a purchase order? That really matters, and what they're okay with you using it for. The Catalyst funds are really for stuff. Don't pay yourself, don't buy a website, buy stuff.
And the Catalyst is different than this program. So I'll talk a little bit about what.
We use to buy a 3D printer kit that we use for custom plastics for our prototyping business.
How's that working?
We're still getting it calibrated. It was an open source one. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
a little finicky.
Yeah.
It's almost there.
Do you have questions as to what type?
What's that?
Just asking what model.
Oh.
Sorry.
I believe it was the Menlo.
That was it.
Okay.
Off the top of my head.
So you spend it on stuff.
Yeah, we generally spent it on stuff. Most of the time when we got money, it came with the string of you do not pay yourself or you will get no more money ever. And when that threat comes, you are very respectful of it.
You listen to it.
Other resources, I guess faculty are a huge resource. Get to know professors. With the trips to India, we got plane tickets, we got put up in India, we got all the raw materials. We also got corporate connections from those professors. I have a corporate contact who every about 3 to 4 months I can hit up for about $5,000 and he can just sign for that. But again, that has to be for materials, that's not for paying me. So.
Okay, that's helpful. I'll maybe have a question.
Marketing and advertisement? Or?
Yep.
That's actually a pretty good list. So people, talented people, people with different skills, you'll need access to them. Some of those people may be for knowledge, right? You need sort of knowledge resources, so maybe professors may have some advice. I think as Erin pointed out, getting to know professors and mentors and alumni will grant you access to things that you can't afford, right? So you can get access to resources without buying them by impressing people with your knowledge about this problem and your proposal for solving it. If people think you've got it, they'll invest money and time and resources in you. And so this money is really meant to, that's why they call it seed money, right? It's really meant to kind of get you started. But it's an opportunity for you to show people what you can do with this money so that then they will invest more money and time and resources into you. So you'll need people who do things. I want to talk about people in a minute. You need technology, so whether it's buying computers or laptops or a calculator. Then materials, and this will vary based on the project, right? Some projects may need poster materials. I know Lowell Sprouts, Mary Beth had done some work, and she used the material to buy seedlings, right, because they were planting gardens. She used the material to buy some food for the kids, so when she met with the kids in order to keep their attention, she bought snacks to feed them. So depending on what you're doing, it could be used for different items. Now knowledge. So when you mentioned professors, there's certain knowledge here. But you might also use some of these funds to get some more training, right? Or to attend a conference. You mentioned you're at the food show, right? That costs money, right? It costs money to do these things. We sent students down to the Northeastern's Expo, right? We needed a bus. We needed transportation. It costs money to do things that will help you gain knowledge. So the money, you might use some of this money to help gain that knowledge. You may need access to reports or databases. Some of that we can help you with, right? Some of that we have access to. Some of that you might want to purchase. I think you mentioned marketing, so there's raising awareness, outreach, raising awareness of what you're trying to do so that you can generate interest, maybe generate more supporters. I think that's a pretty good group, I'd say. And so what you want to think, anything that you ask for, you want to be clear, you want to be ready to answer the question why. Why do I need this? Right? Why do I need this resource? Because before people give you something, they want to know that you have some sense of how you're going to use it and why it's important. And if you can help them understand why it's important, then you can help sway their perspective and their likelihood to contribute to your cause. Yeah? And I think your project would be perfect for it. Tomorrow morning I'm heading down to Washington. I'm going to the National Collegiate Inventor and Innovator Association Conference. It's a 2.5-day conference, and it brings together, it encourages students like you to do what you're doing. But they do have a couple of competitions every year where students can put together proposals. Look at these other sources, the Campus Catalyst, Kickstart, not only National Collegiate Inventors and Innovation Association, but there are other groups in this area that do those types of things. And I'll tell you, one of the reasons why I started doing this Difference Maker program is because I look at you all as the UMass Lowell Innovation Farm Team, right? You're in training, right? Your projects, you're going to get out there, you're going to try this, you're going to learn something from it. But I want you to compete in national competitions. The Rice Business Plan competition gives away $1 million. The prizes, right? It's a collegiate competition that you all could enter once you sort of fine-tune your skills. So this is, think of this as sort of a first step. I mean, we're dangling a small amount of money, but the idea is to help prepare you to ask for much larger sums and to compete with other colleges around the country and asking for that money. So we have big plans for you. You all might not have known this, but we have big plans for you. It's no difference than a sports team here. So those are some resources, some of the reasons you might need them. And how do you ask for money? So I think the first part, it took me a while to get to this point, right? Because the first part here was really to help you think a little bit about the different types of resources that are out there and what you might need money for. And hopefully this has jogged your brains a bit and you're jotting down, oh yeah, I didn't think of that, I didn't think of that. I think what's important is helping the person you're asking the money for to understand why it's needed and why it's important. And if they feel that it's important, then the pocket opens up a little more. Now, Youssef, I kind of picked on you a little earlier on that value question, so I want to come back to that. So part of explaining to the funder is sort of the, well, I need this in order to make my mold, or I need this. But the other part is to figuring out what is important, what does the funder value? So whether you're going to somebody and asking them for access to a mold machine, or you're going to an agency and asking them for $50,000 so you can kick off this international support program in Rwanda, what you always want to do is you want to learn something about what that person does or what they're interested in. And so you don't want to waste your time asking people for money who aren't interested in funding the types of things you do. But there are certainly organizations out there that would fund those types of more social-oriented causes. There are quite a few of them. Social entrepreneurship, sustainability, those are very important values in many cultures now. And so there are funds out there. So if you spend some time figuring out what's important to the funder, and what we're trying to let you know, that's why I showed you those categories. We'll make sure to get the judging criteria for you so you know what's important to us. But moving beyond this, understanding the types of things they fund. So when I was running the online education program, I knew that the Sloan Foundation had an online education consortium, and I knew that they had funding, and I spent a lot of time working with that and working with Jack. We spent a lot of time talking to them. It took us a couple of years working with them before we actually got some funding, but we got a $750,000 grant from them because we built a relationship. So sometimes these things take time, but you guys are young, right? You're doing some great things already. So you have time to build those relationships and understand what was important. When I was in Florida, I met with an alumni. Do you know Hank Powell? Class of '57. Paper engineering. So Hank was down in Naples, Florida, and I met him at this event. In fact, someone introduced him to me because they knew he would be interested in supporting these types of things that we're doing. Hank was a great guy. We started talking, we hit it off, we had a drink together, and it turns out he lives in Andover. So he has a place in Florida, he's up. So now I've made this connection with somebody who's interested. I know he's interested in this type of thing. So I made sure to invite him on the 17th, and now I didn't ask him for money yet. That will happen down the road. But what I want him to understand is this is what I'm doing, and this is important, and build a relationship with him so that at some point I can say to him, would you be interested in funding some aspect of this? So think about that when you're asking for resources. Products are pretty straightforward, right? If you're doing a product, you all can find a market, right? You can say, okay, so we know that high school football and hockey players are injured. We know their parents might support this. Eventually you can do the sort of market research that gives you a very target market. It's a little more challenging when you're doing a social venture, but it's still important. And the challenge there is you have multiple customers. So you have clearly the people in Rwanda who might benefit, or the women in prison, but then you have the people that are going to have to help you fund this. And in your case, you actually have bureaucracy that you have to deal with. So you have to, they're a customer, right? They're a customer, and you have to figure out what's important with them and how do I cater or tailor what I'm doing to help address something that's important to them. And so keep that in mind as you're thinking about what you're trying to do. There are different customers. You have different customers. Most of us have a mix of customers that we're working for, our clients, our patients, our potential funders. So help them to understand the need. Present reasonable estimates. So that means you have to do some homework. So when you ask about using injection molding machine, for example, you have to spend a little time figuring out, well, what would you normally pay? What would the university charge to do this? So there is actually a resource you can use. Teresa Hamlin she's a person on campus whose job is to, it's an interesting job. Her job is basically to charge companies for using our equipment and resources on campus. But she's slowly in a process of kind of pulling it together in a much more organized way than it's ever been. But that would be a place you could start to at least get a sense of what would you charge. Yep. Hamlin? Is it H-A-M-E-L-I-N or H-A-M-L-I-N? Something like that. Okay, so present reasonable estimates. And then I'm going to show you a budget. So I think what would work great for this request is to put together a simple budget, helping you to focus on what you're doing. And then you'll explain what the budget will accomplish. So can you all see this? Okay, back there. So this is actually a pretty simple budget, and it goes to one of the questions I think Erin raised about paying yourself. We may actually allow students to use some of this funding to pay somebody. We don't want you to use all the money to pay someone, but if you can convince, not so much the judges, because we'll probably negotiate what you end up spending with after it's awarded, but if you can help us to understand that if I get $2,000 from this grant this summer, I'm not going to work at Market Basket, and I'm going to focus on this project, and it's going to allow me to kick it off the ground. That's something that we would be very sympathetic to. So I say we're treating this a little different than the Catalyst money. There'll be a little flexibility. And the other thing we might be able to do is look at ways of finding some ways to maybe fund some students to work on their projects as well. So that's something to keep in mind. Basically, I just made some simple categories, right? Labor costs, material costs, equipment costs, marketing outreach costs. There could be others that you'll think about. Yep?
Could you explain in kind?
Yes, yes, absolutely. I'll go through that. And so we have some category costs, and then I have 3 columns here, right? So the request is what you're asking our judges for. The in-kind would be a donation of your time, right? So if you are going to, like say, on this hypothetical project, pilot the use of online courses to reach students who have dropped out of high school. Sounds like has some value, right? There could be a business model there. We don't know yet, but there could be. And you'll see my budget request for the judges is $48.50. My total budget is $15,350. And the reason it's so high is because I valued my time as a project manager, 0.25 FTE, so a quarter of a full-time employee. Now, this full-time employee is only making $40,000 a year, which would be really good for some folks, but truthfully, it wouldn't support my lifestyle at this point. But let's just assume it would. So I put that in there because you want to start to think of the costs that this business really consumes. And if you do that, at some point, if you form an LLC and then you start to talk to angel investors and you have to value the company, it's going to become really important that you think about how much that project manager costs, how much time you have into it. And this is true whether you're doing a for-profit or a non-profit venture. Because if you're doing a non-profit, at some point you're going to write a grant. You're going to write a big grant. And in that grant, they may ask for an in-kind contribution. So if you start thinking about the time that you donate, that's one way of capturing it. Now, you notice, I think on this last slide, I said something like, when you make an in-kind contribution, you want to make a reasonable estimate. You don't want to just pick a number that's unrealistic. Like if I said that my in-kind contribution was $250,000 for quarter time, that means I make $1 million a year. And regardless of what Chad may think, I really don't make that much. So you just want to keep that in mind. So you have in-kind, and I also included a category called out-of-pocket. I mean, honestly, you could probably blend in-kind and out-of-pocket, but this is for money I'm going to take right out of my own account. So I'm going to take $500 and just take care, or maybe I've already done that. Maybe I've already spent $500 on stationery, business cards, that type of thing. How many of you ever watched the show Shark Tank? A lot of you. Okay. I love Shark Tank because it's the best business finance course I've come across, right? Those investors, if you watch that show, they're able to estimate the business value of a company in 5 minutes, right? And basically the way they do it is they ask the investor, do you have any sales? Or they ask the company, do you have any sales? And they might say, well, I have $1 million of sales. And then they ask, well, and how much have you invested? Well, I've invested $1 million in the company so far, right? And I'm just making these up. So, okay, so you've got $1 million invested and you're making $1 million a year. So let's say right now this company is worth $2 million. And then the company will say to them, well, I need, let's see, say I need $5 million, and I'll give you 10% for $5 million. And they'll look at them and they'll say, well, wait a minute, 10% of $2 million is $200,000, right? So if I want 10% of your company, I should just give you $200,000, because all your company is worth right now is the $1 million you have invested and the $1 million that's coming in. So when they pick out this number out of the sky because they don't want to give up ownership, this is the way investors sort of think about these businesses and how they're valued. So from a nonprofit perspective, you may not be worrying about the investment return, but you do want to be thinking about these categories, because I submitted and we do this when we do grants, I submitted an economic development agency grant this summer. It was a request for $1 million in funding, and we had to provide $1 million in match. And this is for a nonprofit. So that meant I had to figure out where $1 million in match on the part of the university and our other partners were coming from. And it doesn't mean I had to pull money out of the bank, but I had to show a portion of my time, a portion of this person's time, the cost for using rooms, that sort of. Any questions? Okay. So I think that's about what I wanted to share with you all tonight. I hope you found this helpful. The rocket pitch. Holly, the rocket pitch materials, do we have them up on the website?
I don't think I uploaded them yet. They might be, though. I need to double check.
So if you and Ha could talk about that tomorrow, I really rely on these folks, as you can see, you know. I just travel, and they stay here and do the work. So if you could, what we should probably do is maybe put together a template, a rocket pitch template, and then a few slides explaining what the rocket pitch is. And that way people will have that and they can start working on their idea. And also the template for the idea plan. So then at this point, you've got a lot of work to do, right? So you want to work on that. The other thing, the faculty fellows and the student team, if you want to talk to someone before the 4th, if you want to meet with somebody before the 4th, just email Holly or Ha and they'll set it up. And we'll set up a time to sit down with any of your teams, answer any questions, and help you prepare for the rocket pitch. And then make sure you sign up for a practice pitch on the 4th, or let us know if you can't make that date and we'll accommodate you. Thanks very much. It's been great to see you all.